Angel Reese's journey through racist scrutiny and media double standards has rightfully drawn support, but somewhere along the way, that support mutated into surveillance. Fans, especially black men, are now being scrutinized for celebrating other stars, particularly Caitlin Clark, as if cheering for one invalidates the other. This isn't solidarity, it's coercion disguised as consciousness. The video challenges this rigid framework by contrasting it with NBA fandom, where race rarely defines who fans are allowed to admire.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
From Nikola Jokic to Luka Doncic, black audiences have always made room for talent, regardless of background. So why is that meritocratic spirit suddenly off-limits in the WNBA? The answer lies in how legitimate advocacy can morph into gatekeeping when left unchecked. The speaker doesn't sideline Angel Reese's reality. He centers it, but insists that structural advocacy must be aimed at systems, not individuals. Treating casual appreciation like betrayal alienates would-be fans and risks turning a historic moment for the WNBA into an ideological minefield. Sustainable growth, the video argues, depends on a cultural shift that celebrates athletic brilliance without demanding racial allegiance. Inclusivity, after all, shouldn't require anyone to pick a side. No, the WNBA didn't actually ban black men from supporting Caitlin Clark. That headline? Sensational. Clickbait. But it's also not coming out of nowhere. It's echoing a real, growing tension online, one that's taken root in WNBA fandom and exploded into full-on discourse warfare. Because while no official policy exists, there's a loud, unspoken pressure coming from social media. If you're black and male, you better not be too loud in your praise of Caitlin Clark. That's the drama, and it's getting harder to ignore. The friction started as a question of fairness. Why does Caitlin Clark, a white rookie, get flooded with attention, endorsements, and airtime, while black veterans who've carried the league for years still get overlooked? That question is fair. That conversation is necessary. But somewhere along the way, the conversation shifted. It stopped being about media systems and structural inequality, and it turned into a personal purity test. Fans, particularly black men, are now being told that publicly supporting Caitlin Clark is somehow disloyal to black women athletes. And that's where things started to spiral. Because, let's be honest, praising Caitlin Clark shouldn't come with a disclaimer. She's an undeniable talent. Her range is absurd, her impact is real, and her arrival sparked a surge in viewership the league desperately needed. This doesn't mean the love she's getting is proportionate or fair. It's not. But reacting to that imbalance by shaming fans for who they enjoy watching doesn't fix the root problem. It just shifts the blame to people who aren't actually in control. There's a big difference between calling out systemic inequities and trying to control individual expressions of fandom. And that distinction has gotten lost in this mess. Social media has turned WNBA fandom into a battlefield, and now everyone is forced to choose a side. Are you Team Caitlin or Team Angel? Are you rooting for the phenom who gets all the headlines, or standing with the players who've had to fight for recognition every step of the way? And here's the kicker. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese themselves aren't at war. This entire polarization is being built by us, the audience. Angel Reese has spoken out about racism, misogyny, and the double standard she's faced. Those are very real, very serious issues. She deserves support. She deserves protection. But somewhere along the way, valid advocacy mutated into something more performative. A mindset where cheering too loudly for Clark becomes a moral failing. It's not just you like her. It's what does your support mean? And that's a slippery slope. Because now we're not talking about basketball anymore. We're turning sports into ideological theater. And in doing so, we're forgetting that fandom has always been about excitement, spontaneity, connection. If you remove that freedom, you strip sports of their most human quality, the joy of watching someone do something extraordinary and just feeling it. Compare this to the NBA. Black fans have long celebrated white and international stars without controversy. Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, Manu Ginobili, and now Cooper Flag. There's no social cost to being a black man hyped about Jokic dropping 40 and dishing 10 assists. Why? Because skill is respected. The conversation stays centered on performance. Race is present, yes, but not as a loyalty test. So why is the WNBA different? Some argue it's because of what the WNBA represents, a space created and led by black women, built in the shadow of exclusion, constantly forced to prove its legitimacy. That context matters, but using that history to police who gets to cheer and why, that's not empowerment. That's just a new form of gatekeeping. This isn't about ignoring injustice. It's about refusing to collapse every gesture of enjoyment into a referendum on race. You can absolutely support Angel Reese and demand equitable coverage while still acknowledging that Caitlin Clark's talent is mesmerizing. Those positions are not mutually exclusive, but that nuance doesn't play well online. And as a result, casual fans, the exact kind of audience the WNBA needs, are being alienated. People who just started tuning in, who were genuinely excited about the league's growth in 2024, are now being told that their fandom is suspect, that they need to understand the dynamics before they post a clip or wear a jersey. That kind of gatekeeping is not activism. It's not helping anyone. It's especially dangerous when you consider how precarious the WNBA's growth still is. Yes, 2024 brought record ratings and sold-out arenas, but the league doesn't have the institutional support of the NBA or NFL. It's still vulnerable. And if the environment around it becomes toxic, if new fans feel like they have to pass an ideological test just to enjoy the game, they'll walk away. They won't tweet back. They won't argue. They'll just stop watching. And once the numbers drop, the media follows. The sponsorships dry up. The momentum dies. All because we couldn't let people enjoy the product without turning it into a litmus test. This is where the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark discourse becomes a case study in how good intentions can go sideways. Angel has faced racial harassment that shouldn't be minimized, but we have to be careful not to weaponize that pain into a tool for silencing admiration for someone else. Reese deserves to be uplifted, but that doesn't require Caitlin Clark to be demonized or her fans to be shamed. The deeper issue here is a lack of clarity about where to direct anger. Instead of holding brands accountable for giving Clark a disproportionate share of sponsorship deals, fans are targeting each other. Instead of demanding that networks give equal airtime to black players, they're interrogating why someone posted a Clark highlight. That's not progress. That's distraction. And then there's the metaphor that really lit the match. The infamous bear versus man analogy. Meant to explain black women's preference for solidarity over protection for men, it got twisted into WNBA discourse, and suddenly, supporting Caitlin Clark wasn't just a sports opinion. It was a red flag in a broader social narrative. Liking a player became symbolic of a larger betrayal. It was never meant to be that deep. This kind of metaphor drift, pulling in frameworks from dating culture and applying them to basketball, completely warps the conversation. It turns athletic analysis into emotional projection. And while that kind of content goes viral, it doesn't help us understand anything about the game, the league, or what's actually needed for sustainable growth. So where do we go from here? The answer isn't to silence critique. It's to redirect it. If we want a better WNBA, we need better systems, more equitable media coverage, endorsement deals that reflect the full range of talent in the league, and a cultural environment that welcomes all fans. That means building a space where supporting Caitlin Clark doesn't require an apology, and supporting Angel Reese doesn't require you to hate the attention Clark receives. You don't create solidarity by shrinking the tent. You create it by expanding who's allowed to sit under it. If the WNBA wants to survive and thrive, it needs a culture that values excellence first, where fandom is rooted in skill, performance, charisma, and story. That doesn't mean ignoring race. It means refusing to let it become a weapon against the very people who could help the league grow. Fans should be able to admire greatness when they see it, no matter who it comes from. And they shouldn't have to explain themselves when they do. If you're someone who's been feeling caught in this mess, maybe you've been hesitant to speak up or even cheer too loudly, know this: it's okay to be a fan. It's okay to love the game, to love the players, and to support whoever lights up the court. That's the whole point. So if this hit home, drop a comment. Tell us what you think. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more honest, no-spin breakdowns just like this, hit that subscribe button. We've got a lot more to say. Let's not pretend this is some isolated Twitter drama. What's happening right now in the WNBA fan community is exposing a much bigger fracture, one that reflects a cultural shift in how we interpret public admiration. It's not just about Caitlin Clark. It's not just about Angel Reese. It's about how people are being asked, pressured to translate personal preference into public allegiance. And let's be blunt, it's getting out of hand. The fact that black male fans are being singled out and put under the microscope just for liking a highlight, buying a jersey, or showing up to a Fever game isn't just annoying. It's intellectually dishonest. Because when you break it down, these fans are being told that their enthusiasm for Clark is incompatible with solidarity toward black women athletes. That showing up for one must mean you're turning your back on the other. But that's not solidarity. That's coercion masked as accountability. There is a huge difference between understanding how media bias operates and deciding that individual fans are responsible for correcting those imbalances through self-policing. Supporting a player because they're exciting to watch should not require a political disclaimer. You should not have to issue a statement of intent before you share a clip. It's sports, not a loyalty oath. Let's go back to the principle that actually built sports fandom: meritocracy. Skill speaks. We cheer when we see something incredible. Whether it's a dagger three from the logo or a swatted shot in crunch time, those moments transcend identity. They connect people across lines, race, gender, geography. That's why sports work. Because when the game is on, the game is what matters. But what we're watching now is the reverse of that. The conversation around Caitlin Clark has turned meritocracy into a political battleground. Now, if you're reacting to her step-back three, you're not just reacting to basketball. You're making a statement. You're being watched. This is not how fandom grows. This is how it suffocates. Let's be clear. The WNBA is not in a position to turn people away. The league is still fighting for mainstream attention, consistent broadcasting, and real investment. It cannot afford to make casual fans feel like they're intruding just because their enthusiasm doesn't come with the correct social context. And that's what's at stake here. Not just hurt feelings, not just petty drama, but the future of the league. 2024 was a breakthrough. The growth was real. Record numbers, sold-out arenas, increased sponsorship interest. But the thing about momentum is that it's fragile. One misstep, one season of alienation, and all that growth can stall. And the current wave of fan fragmentation, it's exactly that kind of misstep. Because once people feel like the WNBA is a space where you can't just enjoy the game, where you have to constantly navigate social commentary to be allowed to cheer, they'll disengage. Not out of spite, not even out of offense, just out of exhaustion. Nobody wants to be scolded for liking basketball, especially when, in men's sports, this tension doesn't even exist. NBA fans aren't accused of betraying anyone when they hype a white or international player. Jokic gets love. Luka gets love. There's no interrogation, no suspicion. It's understood that if you're great, you get praise. Period. That's the meritocratic backbone that keeps fans engaged. So why does the WNBA get a different rulebook? If anything, the league should want to be more like the NBA in this regard. Not because the NBA is perfect, but because the NBA has figured out how to let fans be fans. Without all the posturing. Without turning every highlight into a philosophical debate. Without making support conditional. The reason the NBA survives player turnover, scandal, and even lockouts is because its fandom is broad and accessible. The culture isn't one of interrogation, it's one of connection. And that's exactly what the WNBA needs to cultivate right now. Especially now. Because here's the hard truth. The WNBA has never had this much attention before. And with that attention comes scrutiny. But that doesn't mean the culture around the league needs to become defensive or punitive. This is the moment to welcome new fans in, not drive them out. And yes, there are real systemic problems that deserve criticism. Black women in the league have been underpaid, undercovered, and overlooked for years. The way the media machine instantly crowned Caitlin Clark is absolutely part of that broader issue. But if we're going to talk about equity, then let's be precise. The media's bias is not the fault of fans. It's the fault of editors, producers, advertisers, and legacy decision-makers who've historically ignored Black women's brilliance unless it fits a pre-approved narrative. The solution isn't to guilt-trip viewers. It's to hold those institutions accountable. Fans didn't choose who ESPN puts on the front page. They're reacting to what they're given. So if someone sees Caitlin Clark everywhere and decides to check her out, then likes what they see, that's not complicity. That's exposure. And exposure is exactly what the WNBA has been fighting for. It doesn't have to be this binary. Supporting Caitlin Clark doesn't mean ignoring Angel Reese. Cheering for Clark's logo threes doesn't erase the racism Reese has faced. It's possible to hold both truths, to recognize inequity and appreciate talent, to demand justice and celebrate brilliance. But when fans are treated like they have to pick a side, when Black men, specifically, are singled out as problematic for simply enjoying the league's most visible news star, that's not just frustrating. It's dangerous. It risks creating a fan culture so rigid, so joyless, that people stop showing up. And when people stop showing up, the league suffers. Not the players, not the media outlets, the league. There's also a deeper problem here. When performative solidarity replaces meaningful strategy, nothing changes. Calling someone out for liking a highlight reel doesn't redistribute endorsement money. It doesn't fix broadcast disparities. It doesn't make brands reconsider their campaigns. What it does do is divide people who could be allies. It creates false dichotomies where none are needed. And it silences Black fans who actually love the WNBA, who've been riding with it for years, but now feel like there's no place for their honest reactions if those reactions don't align with a specific social script. That's not progress. That's just another form of control. The players deserve better. They deserve a fan base that's passionate and engaged, not tiptoeing around unspoken rules. They deserve fans who can express real joy without needing to file it through a filter. And they deserve a culture that amplifies all their stories, not just the ones that fit the moment's narrative. The league deserves better too, because this could be the beginning of a golden era for the WNBA. The talent is there. The stories are compelling. The stage is finally set. But if we keep turning every conversation into a test, we're going to fumble the opportunity. So if you're here because you love the game, don't let anyone make you feel small for that. If you cheer for Caitlin Clark because she's exciting, keep cheering. If you admire Angel Reese for her grit and power, keep admiring her. If you want to see both of them succeed, you're not confused. You're exactly what this league needs. More fans, more noise, more love for all the players. There's one more layer to all this that we need to talk about, because it's not just about sports or even about race and representation. It's about control. Who gets to set the tone for what fandom looks like? Who decides what's acceptable admiration and what's problematic behavior? Right now, it's a handful of loud voices trying to build a moral hierarchy out of personal taste. And that's where this thing turns from passionate discourse into a form of social surveillance. You can feel it online. The subtle warnings, the not-so-subtle accusations, the coded language. If you're a Black man publicly rooting for Caitlin Clark, you're suddenly under review. Not because of what you said, but because of what it might imply. That's not healthy discourse. That's ideological purity testing masquerading as advocacy. And here's the kicker. It's completely disconnected from what the players themselves are doing. Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark have acknowledged each other. They've competed. They've shared a handshake. They've moved on. The beef isn't on the court. It's in the comments section. It's in the Twitter quote tweets. It's in the posts that demand fans explain themselves for liking one player more than another. This isn't activism. It's content. It's a cycle built to generate attention, not outcomes. Because the real work, the stuff that changes how endorsements are distributed, how networks frame stories, how sponsorships are assigned, that work requires boring, persistent effort. It means targeting brands, lobbying executives, building pressure in places that matter. But instead of doing that, the conversation gets rerouted to individual fans. People with no real power are treated like they're complicit in centuries of inequality for liking a rookie's stat line. It's not just unfair, it's unserious. And it's exhausting for the very people this discourse claims to protect. Black fans, especially men, are being told that their taste must be curated to match an unspoken set of rules. If they cheer for a white player, they need to balance it with proof that they support black players just as loudly. If they tweet about Clark, they better have tweeted about Reese last week. If they bought a Fever jersey, they better have receipts for Mystics tickets. Why is being a fan suddenly an act of negotiation? That level of pressure is not applied equally. No one's out here interrogating white fans about how much they support black athletes. No one's running vibe checks on white viewers who post about Caitlin Clark but stay silent when Aya Wilson dominates. That scrutiny is reserved for black men specifically, and it's incredibly telling. This isn't about balance. It's about surveillance. And the result is a stifling environment where the people who should feel most at home in women's basketball, black fans who've supported it through years of obscurity, are now being made to feel like interlopers. And let's be real, this conversation didn't pop up out of nowhere. It's happening because of frustration. Years of watching black women get less coverage, fewer endorsement deals, less visibility, even when they're the best players in the league. The media didn't just stumble into this. They built it. They amplified Clark while barely acknowledging others who've been dominating for years. And when you see that play out over and over, it builds resentment. That resentment is valid, but directing it toward fans? That's misdirected rage. Because the guy reposting a Clark crossover isn't the reason corporate sponsors ignore black stars. The woman who just discovered the WNBA through Iowa's March Madness run isn't the reason your favorite player gets ignored on First Take. They're not the problem. They're part of the potential solution, if they're welcomed in. But that door keeps getting slammed shut. And what's the long-term cost of that? You lose people. You lose interest. You lose momentum. The exact momentum the league worked so hard to build in 2024, the record viewership, the packed arenas, the viral moments, is now at risk of getting bogged down by an internal identity crisis. And that's not just unfortunate, it's dangerous. Because women's sports still aren't in a secure place. They can't afford internal culture wars. The WNBA has to be strategic, unified, and above all, inviting. If the vibe around the league is that you need a degree in sociology to cheer for a player, then don't be surprised when fans check out. This isn't about asking people to shut up and stop talking about race. It's about recognizing the difference between fighting for systemic change and creating artificial friction between regular people. Structural inequity needs targeted action. What it doesn't need is another thread calling out some guy for reposting Caitlin Clark without a footnote about institutional bias. The players deserve better. The fans deserve better. And the game deserves better. What we need is a culture of both slash and not either slash or. Celebrate Clark and Reese. Acknowledge the imbalance and appreciate the talent. Push for equity without turning people into targets. That's how you grow something real. That's how you build a fandom that can withstand controversy, fatigue, and even bad press. Because it's rooted in something deeper than politics. It's rooted in love for the sport. That's what's being lost here. The joy, the awe, the goosebumps when a shot goes in at the buzzer. The rivalry that makes you stand up in your living room. The shared electricity of a tight game with 5 seconds left on the clock. That's what got everyone into this in the first place. Not discourse. Not posturing. Basketball. So if you're still watching the WNBA, keep watching. If you're posting clips, keep posting. Don't let anyone tell you your fandom needs a permission slip. You're allowed to love who you love. You're allowed to cheer. You're allowed to be here. If you've made it this far, let's keep this conversation going. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Who are you supporting this season? What do you think the league needs to move forward? And if this is the kind of real, unfiltered perspective you want more of, go ahead and subscribe. Because the game's not slowing down, and neither are we.